I did watch all of you shivering, so I made it 4 degrees warmer in here. I hope that was a good move. I will melt in my robe, but you guys will be comfy, so I'm glad. It's what matters. It actually is. The last I heard the doctor say was, "Amy, I can't find the baby's heartbeats. I'm so sorry." That ride home from the doctor's office was the longest 34 minutes of my life. This news crushed me, somewhat continues to crush me, and sadly, I worry will forever be part of what crushes a piece of my heart, leaving me feel incomplete in a way that I have never experienced before. See, almost 4 months earlier, late February to be exact, I was ecstatically introduced to the fact that I was going to be a mother of twins. 3 kids under 3 years old. Not really a surprise pregnancy, seeing that I had injected myself with endless shots and undergone multiple medical procedures. But the IVF process aside, I was so elated that God had chosen me to be the mother of 2 more of his creations, and that my 3-year-old son Ezra was finally going to be a brother. Seriously, that's how I felt, and even with Ezra as an 8-year-old now, it is still how I feel. But with the cessation of that pregnancy came a huge disturbance to my sense of normalcy and growing hope for continuing my family. I was lost. Day after day, my own screams and cries that were mostly inside my head left me sitting in a void. That vast emptiness that fills your heart and lungs and restricts your ability to think or even breathe normally. Time slowed way down. As friends announced their new pregnancies, my heart ached. When congregants reassured me that one healthy child was better than nothing, I felt sick. And even now, as each month passes, and I finally paid off that round of IVF, I'm painfully reminded that my dreams of adding to my family didn't come true at that point. But that story isn't a modern story alone. My need for strength turned me towards our Jewish texts as a place that I often draw insight and comfort and depth from. Our Torah is overlaid with endless stories of child loss, fertility complications, and barren women. We read this morning, the cantor and Mark alone chanted the story of Hannah, whose own fertility hardships made her feel so alone and so desperate for motherhood that she cried out to Adonai, "God, among all of the things that you created in a woman, you created me without that one purpose." She continues, "I have eyes to see and ears to hear, a nose to smell and a mouth to speak. But these breasts you have placed above my heart, they will never feed a child. Why, God? Answer me." Hannah cried with such veracity, such authenticity and truth that it is said only her lips moved in prayer, that she could not even utter a sound, as if she was so broken even her voice wasn't strong enough to emerge. But in her cries and in her healing, Hannah was comforted by God. Hannah was soothed by her prayers, and Hannah was shown her resilience. Resilience. I used to think that word resilience was the human capacity to endure pain, get through loss, pull oneself up by their bootstraps, and move on. Something we call upon from within that we either have or don't have. But as psychologist Adam Grant explains it, a person's amount of resilience isn't fixed. So my initial thoughts were partially wrong. Even if we don't feel strong enough now, we can learn to build it up and actually be stronger, more resilient in the end. So how do we build and exercise this muscle? Resilience comes from deep within us and from discovering and calling on the support of people and the community surrounding us. I certainly wasn't the first person to lose a pregnancy, even of my closest friends. But it was the kindness and bravery of those who shared their experiences, their struggles, their realities, which helped pull me through and make me feel not so alone. Our community does the same for one another. As you look around this room, as you think about who you call daily, the names you read out during Misha Berach, and those you think of before you go to sleep, all of us add our strength and resiliency to those who need someone to lean on. As the saying goes, when we can't hold ourselves up, we lean on our friends to carry us until we can carry ourselves. Resilience also comes from owning the fact that although we do have less control than we want, there's a great deal that we can control, such as our reactions, our decisions, our values, and our beliefs. For example, we get to choose how kind we are to ourselves, the amount of effort that we put forth. As I mentioned last night, are we truly trying our hardest? We get to decide and have control over how often we think about our past and how often we let our past decide our future. We get to think about whether or not we will try again after having many setbacks. As Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl observed, when we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Another way to build resilience is through discovering more meaning in life and seeing new possibilities. One of my favorite books, author Sheryl Sandberg's Option B. Just raise your hand if any of you have read this. It's been a while since it's been out. For those Coleman campers out there, she was a Coleman camper. Sheryl Sandberg, who tragically lost her husband while on vacation in Mexico, has co-authored this important and worthwhile book called Option B. Given to me by a very close friend, this book has become my companion, living in my purse, which I don't really carry, but it's in the car on my chair, and attached to my highlighter so that I can read and reread and repeatedly remind myself just how important practicing resilience can be. Not everything ends up as we have planned. In fact, very little seems to follow the path that we have created and set before ourselves. Sandberg says of the book title, life is never perfect. So when option A is no longer available, look forward to finding option B and then live it fiercely. Temple Israel, think about it for a second. Individually, even in your family, even as a congregation, how many of us are living option B? How many of us are on option C, D, E, F, all the way through Z and started the alphabet again? I laugh also, but it's true. When I ask my kid what he wants to be, I am certain, although I shouldn't be, God's funny, I'm certain that he will not necessarily be a ninja warrior. However, we cultivate each other's dreams. We hear each other's option A. We support one another. But that same existence must happen for each option that follows thereafter, and not just for those who we love, but for ourselves. Why is it so debilitating when we have to put one option behind us and move forward? I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you it certainly feels paralyzing to realize that that option that you were so clinging on to has vanished. I think as all of us here are living some part of option B of the phrase that comes so strongly in Yiddish, or as Grandma Morrison says, she was here last night sitting right there at 103, when we plan, God laughs. So when it seems almost daily that we're derailed and that our option A is no longer a viable plan, where do we turn? Well, Nietzsche famously described personal strength that what doesn't kill you makes you. It takes a while to get stronger, I think, and frankly, I forget this quote by the time I maybe arrive at that strength. But the fact is, Nietzsche was super smart, and all of us know that it really does make us stronger when we can look back and see what we have come through. I'll tell you, and especially with the loss of life, we don't get over things, but time does go on. We do learn how to function in our different steps and options. So with each new plan B, each new option B, we are challenged to rebuild, re-guide, and re-envision what we want for our lives. We all deal with loss. Jobs lost, love lost, lives lost. The question is not whether these things will happen, they will. So what do we do next? As Samuel Beckett said, you must go on. I can't go on. I will go on. From my experience of loss, I learned that when life pulls you under, you can kick against the bottom, break the surface, push yourself up with your own momentum, and breathe again. Yet here we sit today, No matter what the circumstance was, how difficult, how stunting, how debilitating the experience has left us, we have moved on. For me, the voice inside my head keeps reminding me that I can't just be faithful when things go well, when they go how I plan them to be, when option A fits perfectly, but that we must lean on our faith and call God to help us, to seek out others to hold us up and walk us hand in hand towards what might come next, when what we thought our lives would look like fails. The book of Proverbs reminds us a righteous man falls 7 times and still rises up an 8th. In other words, our Judaism encourages us to have resilience, to persevere, and to hold on. And this is what we should constantly remind ourselves. Because when God is ready to show us option B, it's our job to have faith and grab a hold of it, really seize it, and eventually find joy in life once again. Have faith, it is said. The one I will become catches me. But getting to this point, being okay with the fact that option A just isn't going to happen is not easy. But neither is divorce, suffering through a sickness, addiction, losing a parent, the loss of a home. And this list for each one of us can go on and on and on. But look where you're sitting right now. For some of those things, you are past it. For some of those things, you are right in the middle of it. And for some of those things, the people you see sitting around you will help you get through it once it arrives. French novelist Albert Camus wrote, "In the depths of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." We read in the Torah, "I call heaven and earth to witness this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life." God is so clear, and the message speaks such volumes. When life happens, inevitable blessings and curses alike, option B, followed by option C and D, we're instructed to move on, to move forward, and ultimately to choose life. Last week, Mark Lamb and I sent an email out to the congregation letting you know that this is my final year at Temple Israel. This was not my option A. To leave was not my option A or my option B. This has become my family's spiritual home. But there are so many of us that I can learn from, so many of you that I can learn from, so many of you, as I wrote in my letter, I've already learned from. This congregation has been here far before my time, before I was even born. This congregation has been the home to some of your parents, some of your grandparents. To some of you, I see past presidents in the congregation. Thank you. I stood strong and can continue to stand strong this entire year on this bema because of what your family's built. I get chills when I look out and see the leadership that has stood up and said, this wasn't my doing, but this is all of our option B. It is no one's fault that our congregation is in a financial challenge, but it is everybody's opportunity to get us out of it. For the next year, I committed, and you know that I will stay to that word, that I'm your rabbi, and that Cantor Nelson is your cantor, and that I stand up here so proud to be here this high holidays. I'm not a lame duck coming into work. This is my spiritual home, and you are our congregation. But if I can give you one hint to what your option C is going to look like, it's going to take every single one of you. It's going to take every single one of us. It's going to take a passion from within, resources from without. It's going to take a lot of God and a lot of faith. I certainly think it's worth it. I would not have brought my family here if I did not think Temple Israel was worth it. My option C is on the horizon, and I have no idea, 100% honestly, where I will be next Rosh Hashanah. Not a clue. In fact, why didn't I give this sermon last night? Because I don't want to scare my son. This is very real, okay? This is not just a congregation. This is a home to so many of us. So when I ask you to think about what option you're in right now, somewhere in your heart and mind should be helping Temple Israel survive another 100 years. It is not about your rabbi, your president, your executive director, your board. It's not even about a legacy your parents may have created in this congregation. It's about you and the next generations to come. I cannot be more clear when I say the people who will be greatly affected by this synagogue may not even be born yet. Last week's Torah portion, Atem Nitzavim Hayom, we all stand here today, had to do with people receiving Torah from the past, in that moment, and who are yet to be born. What option do we have to not support this congregation in its longevity? If you're here, you know that this is a special place. It needs to be maintained. It needs to be maintained physically, financially, spiritually, and through its leadership. I don't know how you can give and whether it's financial or of your passion or both. But you know what? I don't have a job next year, and I'm here giving because I believe in Temple Israel. I see the cringes on your face. That's a horrible sentence for the rabbi to say from the bima, but it's true. And you know what? I'm going to own that truth because as I stand here, I fight for my kids to have a religious school this year, for you to have a high holidays this year, for all of us to celebrate our 101st birthday in May. If I can stand here confidently and say this option C was not planned, I can tell you that. But I'm going to take hold of it, and I hope that you will stand next to me in the moments where I have a hard time standing. So I end with this. Dear God, entering this new year and always, I pray that we walk through life and all of its experiences that you place before us, blessings and curses, challenges and victories. I pray that you stand next to us. Please also use your compassion and love to remind us that we are not alone in this struggle, in our sadness and in our loss. Provide us all as a congregation, as individuals with strength, persistence, and resilience to look into our collective and individual future with hope and faith and praise. Be sure to comfort our minds and our hearts when we lose sight of our inner power to move forward. Remind us that you are always, even when we can't see or feel you, with us. Elohai neshama shenatata bi, the soul you have given me is a pure one, and I will not take it for granted. Evchor b'chayim, I choose life. Evchor b'chayim, we choose life. Amen.
Amen.